we're getting a little personal. It's a little bit more inwardly focused. And this is Lilly Lewin, and we're so excited to have her a part of this. She is a worship curator, speaker, author, artist, and founder of Thin Places, a pilgrimage of discovery and creativity. So she creates sacred spaces all around the country and even outside of the country.
England is as far as I've gone so far.
Yeah. Doing this for all sorts of different denominations and those things, making church less boring, which is something that I love that you say. And her passion is to help people of all ages engage God with all their senses, bringing art and artists back to the church. So this is a huge part of what we do here through the sanctuary spaces. And so, Lilly, tell us a little bit about your story, why this is so important for you.
Well, because I'm the kind of person that was a workaholic. I inherited that, and I know how to go Mach. I say this all the time. I think I said this in the video before. Mach 2 with your hair on fire was kind of my way of youth ministry, and I burned out. And I had a boss who, I went from a church that was huge, like a staff of 90 to a staff of 4. And the staff of 4 church said, oh, they didn't ask me for quotas, they didn't ask me for goals, they didn't ask me for all the things that I knew I was supposed to do before. They didn't ask me any of those questions. And I thought they were like stupid. I thought, what is wrong with you people? Don't you know we need to get more people here? And instead, this boss said, you need to go to the Abbey of Gethsemane and practice silence. And I thought that he was insane because I'm an extrovert. Why do extroverts need to go have silence? And instead, it saved my life. So I started practicing silence, and I jumped in with both feet because I was so desperate, and I spent 5 days the first time. I don't necessarily recommend that for everybody, but it's become my practice every year to go and spend 5 days with the monks about a mile from here usually, which is at the Abbey of Gethsemane, and that's Thomas Merton's place if you know of him. And anyway, silence saved my life because I realized that I am so noisy in my head, and I do so much that if I don't get quiet, I can't ever hear from God. And how do I help anybody else hear from God if I can't hear? Yeah. So it usually takes me till Wednesday. So if you get there on Monday, I can't hear anything until at least Thursday because my head is so loud. Everything in my head is loud. So. Yeah. And then I really want to stay longer because about Friday is when God starts really talking. But you have to go. So. Yeah.
So. For those of us that don't have an Abbey anywhere near us, not that you do now, but anyway, what do you do to create space in your own life?
Well, I found a few years ago that I'm a Celtic Christian, and not crazy, just Celtic. And the Celtic Christians believed of praying along the way, kind of like Brother Lawrence, that everyday practices can become prayer time. One of the things is, like, I used to get up and turn on music or news or something in the morning. I don't have anything on in the morning. I turn it off. My husband is not a morning person, and I am, so that also helps the marriage. But to be quiet and start your day quietly, I know people have kids, and that's harder, but to even get up like 5 minutes early to where there's nobody talking can start your day in a different way. Walking my dog became a prayer practice, so I would walk around the neighborhood and pray for all my neighbors, like each house, and we lived near the high school, so I got to pray around the high school every day. And people ultimately, after we lived there for 10 years, figured out that I was praying as I was walking the dog, not just walking. And so they would come out periodically and say, oh, okay, somebody needs prayer. And I would actually get specific prayer requests to pray as I prayed around the neighborhood. And the Celtic Christians would pray as they started their fire in the morning, as they walked the fields to plow. And so I kind of adopted that of praying over my laundry, praying for my kids as I folded their socks, and I hate socks, and praying, as I do the dishes. That's another thing. I hated my kitchen. I hate doing dishes. My husband's the cook. I'm not, so I do the dishes. And we didn't have a dishwasher forever, so I made my kitchen into a prayer space. And so I still to this day have Post-it notes. That's my prayer wall. So if somebody says, would you pray for me about something, then I have a Post-it note over my sink that's how I remembered to pray. In my other house, I had a window that was my prayer window, so I put Post-it notes in the window when people asked me to pray for them. So that's how I remember to pray. I got my students to start praying with their toothbrushes because you are supposed to brush your teeth twice a day. Right. So that's a practice that I pray for my students as I brush my teeth. I've actually prayed more for my students, the last group of kids I had as a youth pastor, more since they've graduated than even when they were in my youth group, sad to say. But brushing your teeth, you can remember like for 2 minutes who you can pray for.
And that's just a great idea to get junior high kids to do anything hygiene oriented.
That's good. Yeah. Very true.
2 strokes of deodorant, 2 prayers.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And so I actually had them write. I gave out toothbrushes I got at the dollar store, and I made them write with Sharpie marker on the handle of the toothbrush 3 people they needed to pray for. And so they prayed for those 3 people, people who needed to know the love of God every time they brushed their teeth.
That's great. So then, thinking back about your time at the Abbey and how it took you to
3 days.
almost 3 days to kind of get those thoughts out of your head. I mean, as a youth worker and any place where you're working with people where there's constantly things that you could be thinking about, constantly things you could be redoing, reimagining, how do you do that in your own daily life? How do you find time to really shut off those thoughts?
Well, like I said, turning off things, which is really hard because I really like my phone. But taking time to even say, okay, I'm going to take 5 minutes and turn everything off, or 15 minutes. And then you have to do a brain drain because your brain is going, so brain drain list is like taking a piece of paper or your journal and just everything that comes up, even while you're praying, everything that comes up. Okay, I didn't do this yet, and I forgot about this. And it usually comes, everything comes up when you're trying to be quiet. And that's not bad. That's just what happens. So give yourself permission. The big word that I want to give everybody is permission. We need permission to stop and rest. We need permission to practice Sabbath, not just on our day off, do all our laundry and errands and cut the grass and everything we didn't do every other day of the weekend because we were working. So Sabbath means you do something fun that feeds your soul. Sabbath is being with God in a way that makes you sing. Not necessarily sing vocally, but sing in your soul. Sure. So the brain drain list, to go back to your first question, is that's a key to any time I spend with God. Is I have, I just write down all the stuff that's bugging me, all the stuff that keeps coming up, like the laundry and the dishes and take the kids here and there, and so just keep giving it back to God. But in terms of Sabbath, I'll go back to that, is that I didn't understand that that's, to me, the most broken commandment, is that remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Because if you work at a church, that's work. It may be really great work, and it's really wonderful work for the kingdom, but it's work. So we need a Sabbath that is something that feeds us and feeds our souls. And so for me, that's art. One way, for me, it's going out and taking a walk. I think walking is one of the most spiritual things we can do, not just with your dog, but like I said before, just being with God and noticing nature. But to say, okay, how could I take a Sabbath? You can't do it once a week, do it once a month, where it's just a day for you to get outside or to do whatever makes you sing. Thin place is the Celtic Christian word for where heaven and earth is closest. And the Celtic Christians believe that God, heaven and earth were 3 feet apart all the time, but there were sacred places where it actually touched. So my husband and I came back from the UK and we said, so how do you create thin place in your everyday life? How does that happen every day, not just when you go on retreat or to the beach or to the mountains? And so for us, it was thinking differently about our house. And we took the TV out of our main space and put it in a different room. So you actually had to go somewhere else versus walking in the room and turning it on. That helped us create kind of thin place in our everyday world. Another thing we did was to kind of create space that was, we started praying over our house to be a silent, and not necessarily silent, but a place of peace where when people walked in, they thought, oh, there's something different, and practice hospitality. That was another thing. But in terms of finding your own thin place, I'm interested in knowing what makes you connect with God best. That's your thin place. So some people it's cooking and baking. Some people it's running. Stephen Argue and I talk about that because he puts running thoughts on his Twitter feed. That's his place he finds God. And so think about the thing that where you connect to God best, and that's your thin place, and start practicing that more. Because too often we get so busy in our ministry that we don't take time to do what is passion for us. What's our thin place?
Yeah. So give us a little bit of an idea, for those of you that haven't visited the sanctuary space yet, maybe what are some little things that to give us a bigger picture of what your hope is for that space, and maybe even practically a rundown of like one of the activities.
Okay, today at 11:15 we're praying with Victor Hugo. So with Les Mis, if you've ever seen the movie or the play, we're learning how to pray with Victor Hugo. And yesterday we did art, but there's an art table in that space that's open all the time. So the sanctuary is a place where you can come in and engage God with all your senses, but we interrupt you. That's what we say about this. We interrupt you with periodic things we do in there, like morning prayer and midday prayer and Compline. And tonight I don't know what time Compline is tonight, but we have communion tonight. So we celebrate together, and everyone is welcome at the table. Let's see, what else are we doing today? Probably praying. There's a praying with beads, I think, today. So there are lots of prayer practices that we do there, but the art table for praying with art is always there. And then there's a corner prayer space that has art pieces that you can pray with and some things to think about. And then the prayer chapel's across the hall. And what I say about the prayer chapel is we never interrupt you in there. It's always quiet, it's always still, and you can take a nap in the corner. Oh, that's what we have today. We have napping. Napping in the sanctuary too, which is actually a designated thing on the schedule. And people can sleep and snore, and we won't kick you out if you snore. What else can I tell you? The other piece you asked me about my own practice is I discovered spiritual direction coming to the National Youth Workers as a youth worker. Beth Slavkov, who is here as a spiritual director, was my spiritual director for about 5 years, once a year when I saw her at National Youth Workers Convention. The funny thing now is I work with her, so that's really cool. But spiritual directors, unlike counselors or therapists, spiritual directors help you hear what you already know. They listen, and they actually help you hear what God is already talking to you about. So they kind of help you sit with something that's going on and go, oh, that's what and you already know it, but your mind is going so fast, or you haven't given yourself permission to actually hear what God is saying to you. So it's a great way there's still some spaces up there. If you go by the sanctuary and the prayer chapel, there's a table outside, and that has sign-ups for times with a spiritual director. And that's helped me in my real life, not just in my conference life, to have somebody who can hear me, who is listening for God too, and can kind of help me walk on to the next part of my path.
Yeah. So any final words of encouragement for youth workers in the realm of soul care, anything that you want to leave us with?
Well, I just believe that if we don't take care of ourselves, that we can't love and take care of other people. And our job is to model what we want our students and our families to follow. And so if we're not taking time to take care of our souls, then we can't expect them to. And so for me, it's about baby steps. Don't think, okay, I've got to spend 5 days with the monks somewhere. Not everybody's going to want to ever do that. But to take 5 minutes and to say, okay, I'm going to have a mini Sabbath, or I'm going to turn off whatever music or whatever is in my car and just pray as I go, or listen, taking the time to get rid of noise. And when I've created sacred spaces for students, that's the first thing people say is thank you for providing a quiet place, because their worlds are so filled with stuff that they need a place to be quiet and start listening as well.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Well, let's thank Lily for sharing her thoughts. And Lily,
you're welcome.
Really